what happens if your village is dumb or ignorant to what you need in order to grow?
I mean, I think an easy example we just brushed over was your garden.
Sure, right?
Your herbs.
I like to grow my herbs and have my garden, and nobody cares.
It kind of requires us to also look around to see, like, are we like planted in a place that will allow us to grow in the ways we want to grow?
Because sometimes people can grow with you and other times
they can't. Y'all want to stay out till the club close? No.
Depends on the night. Sometimes I'm like that. Sometimes I want to stay out till the club close. Anyway, side note, the reason we're here today is because, I don't know, would we schedule our time to go out to eat?
No.
I don't think so.
This is Sistas Declassified, the podcast where
Taylor
and Taryn,
your virtual sisters, share experiences, insights, and of course the juicy secrets that never leave the sister circle.
So shh, listen up. The Declassified convos are starting now.
Welcome back to Sistas Declassified. We're real life sisters who decided to start a podcast instead of going to the spa.
Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe. We post new videos every Wednesday. And you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Sistas Declassified.
Woohoo! Okay, so before we get started, I saw this, I guess this whole episode is about posts I've seen. But before we get started, I wanted to ask you a question. Because I saw Savannah James was saying she doesn't like being called wifey. So I wanted to ask you, would you care if Vashawn called you? Or no, it's not Vashawn calling you wifey. It's like other people being like, oh, you're his wifey, or oh.
You mean Savannah James, LeBron James' wife?
Uh-huh.
Savannah James? Okay. Would I care if people called me wifey? No.
She was like really adamant, like, don't call me wifey.
But no. she needs wife.
I'm his
wife. It would not bother me as a wife. I do think that wifey has become a thing people will call anybody who's been around for long enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess maybe she's taking offense to it. Like, there's a difference between,
I've been here for 20 years.
Yeah, there's a difference between like your cousin's little friend
mm-hmm.
and his wife, definitely.
Right.
But
so wifey feels like little friend. That's your little friend.
I think if I was a girlfriend, I would not want to be called wifey.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be called that.
As a wife, I don't care. But as a girlfriend, I'd be like, do you? Nope.
Right. You talking to the wrong person.
Right. we could take boo. We could take, there's other names that aren't wife. Especially if we aren't engaged or, no.
But as a wife, it's like.
As a wife, whatever.
I feel it.
As a wife, your opinion is. I mean, as a girlfriend, your opinion is whatever. But I just think.
It's calling a girlfriend wifey is more shady. But calling a wife a wifey is just like, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a wife. Yeah. I don't know. I was just curious. Obviously, I'm not a wife, so I had to ask somebody who is one. But I was just curious about that. Anyway, side note, the reason we're here today is because I saw something else that was basically...
What happened to your social media break?
Right. Listen, if I take all these breaks, I won't have things to talk about. Or you guys might be bored because all my breaks will just be, let's talk about my herb garden because it looks so great. Can I send you a video of my herb garden to show the people who are watching?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe you guys might want to see it. Anyway,
we can link to it in the description. If you go to her TikTok, you can see all the garden things.
Haters. All right. Anyway, the point of today was that I saw this clip of a pastor and he was talking about how it takes a village to raise a child, right? And then he said, well, what happens if your village is hard R word? So I'll say, what happens if your village is dumb or ignorant to what you need in order to grow? And I was kind of flipping that into, it doesn't only take a village to raise a child, but I think it takes a village for anybody. Everybody needs a village. And
right. Beyond childhood.
Beyond childhood. Basically, I was acknowledging how it doesn't only take a village for a child, but it also takes a village for us as adults. And what happens when your village maybe doesn't look like the direction you're trying to head in. And it doesn't mean that your village is bad per se, but maybe it's just not what you need right now.
Right.
So I guess my declassified moment that I am trying to figure out as a person who's growing in my own way is that I cherish the community that I'm in, but I'm searching for one that feels like a better fit for where I'm going. So I don't know. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit.
I mean, I think an easy example we just brushed over was your garden.
Sure, right?
Your herbs.
I like to grow my herbs and have my garden, and nobody cares.
That's not entirely true.
Nobody cares. So that's okay, right? Like, it's okay that nobody in my current life wants to grow a herb garden too. But what happens when you want to be excited about your things that you're doing and nobody around you cares? Or there's things you're doing and people don't support you, or they're pushing you to stay stagnant, or they're making you seem like the area or way you want to grow is lame. Because I think as I am trying to establish myself and make better choices for my like energy, for my spirit, for overall growth and elevation, it means I have to stop doing certain things, and certain ways of life are not going to be appropriate anymore. Like going out and partying the way in which I do sometimes is not really where I want to go. But also when I get back with certain people, and it's not because they're bad or because they're doing something wrong, but I just know it's somewhere I don't need to continue, I end up reversing back to old habits. And so it's not that my community is dumb or retarded, like this pastor's saying, but just that they're okay still being in a certain space that maybe I'm not trying to be in anymore.
Yeah, I think we can back up a little bit because we talked about like whether or not people care. And I think sometimes people can care, they just don't have the skill set to support you or go with you. Mm-hmm. Or desire, perhaps, right? Like maybe they care about it for you, like happy for you that you got your garden, that you get to grow your herbs,
right?
And eat them fresh like you like. Mm-hmm. But I'm not necessarily going to put the effort in to do that for myself or my home. And so we can't really talk about it because I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
So I think there's like two sides of it, because you could sometimes have a family who like really loves you and really supports you, or a friend group that really loves you and supports you, but they can't talk to you about financial literacy or where to put your stocks or how to buy a house, or these are very like money oriented things, but
even other things like how to manage your emotions. Like some people you might, right, you get raised and it's like they hit you, hit them back.
Yeah.
Right. And you grow up with that philosophy, and it's not just hit you, but if they disrespect you, they talk to you crazy, you make sure that they know not to play with you next time. That is a way of life, a message from your community that you end up later on having to decide whether that's going to stick with you or not. Like, can I actually solve this problem without getting outside of myself? Do I actually have to prove a point here, or can I back off of this argument? Like, those are all things your community might ingrain in you to do differently.
Yeah, and it's up to you to determine what your actual perspective is, because winning to you in some ways might mean beating somebody's ass. In other ways, it might mean I won because I walked away. Mm-hmm. So I think as we grow and mature and start to realize the places we want to be, it kind of requires us to also look around to see, like, are we like planted in a place that will allow us to grow in the ways we want to grow? Are we with the people who are going to help us get to where we want to be? And then, like, what do we have to do to ensure that we don't necessarily always leave our loved ones behind? Sometimes you got to leave people behind, though.
Right. I made up my little quote. You can't grow. Wait, what was it? Can you grow where you're planted if you didn't pick the soil?
Say it again. Say it like you mean it.
Can you grow where you're planted if you didn't pick the soil? So basically asking yourself, if your community that you grew up in doesn't allow you to grow, do you have to look outside of that space in order to bloom? Because I think ultimately you do.
I was like, I think the answer is yes.
I guess, how do you get out of that? How do you recognize that but still appreciate where you came from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like I was saying, you don't want to always leave behind the folks you care about. I think it goes back to some of the conversations we've had before about spending intentional time, like setting boundaries around maybe we can't go out, but we both enjoy watching Love Island. So we can't go out and go to drinks to watch Love Island, but I'll come to your place and I'll bring mocktails and we can watch Love Island,
Right.
you know? Like finding a happy medium that works for everybody so you can still keep connections in the spaces you want to without compromising or sacrificing the person you're working towards becoming.
Yeah, and I think that's a big one for people who are off. I feel like we often cut people off completely without just considering how you can pivot your relationship. Because you're right, our growth is not linear. Everybody's not growing who's 29 and they're all doing the same thing at 29. And so burning bridges is not actually going to help you in maintaining your community if you're always putting your nose down at people's growth patterns.
Right.
You can understand that you might have to have boundaries with them, like you're saying, or show up in different ways, but it doesn't have to be like an end all be all situation.
At least not at first, right? Like, especially if you know and have the awareness of self to say, I'm somewhere where I don't want to be and I'm taking these steps to get there. Looking outside of yourself to see who else seems like they're pushing themselves outside of their comfort zone. I think of our cousin Dalen, for example. Bless his heart. He out here doing a mental health men's group.
I'm proud of him.
Over at Kinfolk, right?
Yeah.
Yes, tap in with him day-to-day life. But I look at him like, okay, that's some inspiration right there. That's somebody I need to be making sure I really check in with, because one, that's my cousin, I should be doing that. But two, because he's doing things that I would love to be doing one day. And I think it's really admirable that he has the awareness of self to know what he needs and then goes, it'd be great if I had some brothers to do this with as well.
Like somebody else needs this too.
Yeah.
And it goes back to our comments of last week's episode or maybe not last week's, it was about 2 weeks ago now from this episode, of just us as millennials can make the space. And he doesn't own that space, but he took it upon himself to go to that space and make connections with the owner, and then he can have his own events there. Like,
yes,
that's not all we have to do. Like, that is a small thing. So don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying it's doable if we are intentional about what we want. And he was, so that's really good.
Yeah, he started out with one event idea in mind, had interest be so crazy that he has multiple events lined up now.
Yeah. Woo, go Daddy.
I know, it's so exciting. I feel like a proud big cousin.
Yes, I lost my thought, but we kind of got off a little bit. But I did want to say another area I feel like where we feel like we can't grow with people is because as women, our friends are often male centered. I think that's a big conversation that people have, in that you go out with your friends and you're trying to hook up with a guy, or you always have a guy that you're dating and you have conflict about it. And so then you want to talk to your friends about it. And that's the ways in which you connect. It's just kind of all male centered interaction. And I find that people often leave those friends behind who are male centered because it's like,
yeah, I was going to say, I don't really think that's been my experience.
You've never had a male-centered friend?
No, I have had male-centered friends, but you got to the point where you said you leave those friends behind. I think I don't stay with those people very long.
Yeah.
So I was like racking my brain right now, like, who are my male-centered friends? You don't
have them anymore.
And I have lots of married friends, right? But I don't have, not that I can think of any male-centered friends.
Yeah. Because I think we all, and very rightfully so, prioritize and want friends you can grow with, which I totally get. But what happens when you have a stunted friend that you still do appreciate the relationship or even the past history? Are those relationships pivotable? Or is it like, I just got to leave you where you're at right now because this relationship doesn't serve me at all?
Yeah, I think if it's like detrimental to your mental or physical well-being, then yes, you leave those friends, those family behind until they get to a place where you feel like you can let them in again if you so choose. But I think, yeah, it goes back to the earlier point of like, okay, what can we do together that feels good to me, that works for you also? And is that person willing to meet you there? Because sometimes they're not.
Right.
It's like, what do you mean you can't come out for my birthday or to celebrate a new job I got, or
Or to have drinks. What do you mean you're coming out, but you're not going to be drunk with me?
Yeah, as someone who doesn't drink most of the time, I would say like 90% of the time when I go out, if I go out, I don't drink. And I do get so annoyed when people are always like, people are like, you're not going to have a drink? That's no fun. And I don't want to drink. I don't want to deal with drinking. I don't want to deal with how it feels to drink. I don't want to deal with the next day of drinking. I just don't.
Right.
And that's okay. That's why I just don't go out. Because if it bothers everyone so much
that you're not
that I am not drinking, maybe this is not the place for us to be together.
But I think the issue isn't always that you're not drinking. It's that you're also like grumpy in the corner.
Right, which is also why I stopped going out, because I don't like going places where I have to scream to talk to the person next to me, because I'd rather be engaged in a conversation. I can dance for a little while, but it depends on the vibe. Like after about an hour and a half, I'm like, whoo, did it, ready to go home. Y'all want to stay out till the club close? No.
Depends on the night. Sometimes I'm like that. Sometimes I want to stay out till the club close. Anyway, but yeah, I think what I was trying to say, and you've hit the nail on the head, is just as people are transition, maybe you just have to pivot where you connect with these people. And if they can't accept that you need that pivot, then that's what lets you know that they are not a community member that you need to hold on to.
Yes. After this podcast, I'm going to meet up with my friends at a park. Why? Because 2 of them have children. So they will have the children entertained at the park. We can sit in the sun and enjoy ourselves and have conversation and meet each other where we're at. That sounds delightful to me. It works for them and their kids. And everybody's happy.
I'm actually basically doing the same thing tomorrow, but we're going to the beach. So
adulting.
We're all bringing food, and it's going to be a lovely day. And some people are bringing their children. So
right. And we are just meeting each other where we're at. We could complain and be like, why don't we ever go somewhere and turn up? You know why.
Right. So let's do something different, because I can't bring my kids to the club, and it's bedtime at 8. So
for me too.
Same. Actually, maybe more like 9:30, but you get the idea. But the other point I wanted to make, just that I think the pastor was trying to highlight on with the village, is just in gaining inspiration from people outside of your community, because you can't necessarily gain that inspiration when you are all struggling with the same thing. And so you can easily pull each other back into habits that aren't as helpful for you. So you have to look outside of yourself and maybe outside of the people that you normally connect with in order to be the change that you want.
Yeah, and I think what's coupled with that is also recognizing what it is exactly you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Are you looking for a friend or a companion? Are you looking for a coach or somebody who's maybe a little ahead of you, or who has done the thing you're trying to do before, and so you're looking for guidance to get to somewhere? Because I think sometimes we also look for people to be our everything.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I'm working on with my relationships, just making sure I'm not like making my husband everything.
Mm-hmm.
He can't be my therapist, my best friend, my protector, but like, yes, but also no, right? Like he's also a person who has his own needs and desires and things to work through for himself, that I can't put my everything into him. And so I need to find other spaces of friendship, other spaces of connection, other spaces to find coaches, teachers, etc. And so I guess thinking about that for yourself is important too.
Mm-hmm. And being okay with the discomfort as you step out of what you're normally in. Because, you don't grow where you're comfortable. So sadly, I wish you could, but you can't.
Yeah. And sometimes it means doing it by yourself, which can make you more aware of like how much you need people or don't need people to do other things. Like I definitely think I'm one who's good to go along with. So if it's somebody's idea, I'd be more apt to do it than if I want to do something and I have to have somebody come with me or invite somebody, when I really should be able to do things by myself.
Yeah. And that's a whole conversation for another day. So to wrap things up, we want to say that we understand that it does take a village, not only to raise a child, but to build up adults and to continue to grow as we live every day. So we wanted to ask you, do you need a new community? And if so, are you going to be taking your old community with you? Because sometimes people can grow with you and other times
they can't.
Mm-hmm. So let us know what you think in the comments below. We want to thank you guys for watching today. You can like, comment, and subscribe, and find us at Sistas Declassified on all socials.
See you in the next one.
Bye.